YouTube and Facebook to everyone, and I'm going to send out a message here. Just if people are joining for the first time today, they can sign up for a subscription to Piano Tech Radio Hour. So putting a little message in the chat there, and I'll explain that in a minute. If people aren't aware of that option, I'll put that in the chat here in Zoom as well. Admit a couple more people. And then also, if people are out, if you're seeing us out on social media, I'll read an intro to what this is, but just so I don't forget, I'm also going to share a link, because you don't have to watch us on Facebook or YouTube. If you want, you can jump in and you can be a part of the conversation. You can participate. So I'll put that link out there. So if you click that link I'm putting out on the socials, Facebook and YouTube, then you can register for this session and jump on the Zoom. All right, great. All right, then without further ado, I'll sort of give us some context as to what we are doing here today. All right, so I want to officially welcome everyone to Piano Tech Radio Hour. And we gather here every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world, including manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. And as I mentioned, if you're joining us for the first time, or you've been joining us for these individual sessions, but you haven't signed up yet to get the recordings in our member area of this Piano Tech Radio Hour, then I put a link in the chat, and you can go to bit.ly/joinptrh. That's bit.ly/joinptrh, all lowercase, no spaces. All right. And let's talk about who is joining us today. And first off, I'm going to feature my own video and hers. And we will be talking today with Hannah Reimann. And if you haven't heard of Hannah, she has a lineage tracing back to Beethoven. He's played classical music and sang in folk and rock ensembles since she was a small child. Over the course of her varied career, she has played concert piano at Lincoln Center. She fronted a punk band in Japan, appeared in over 20 independent films, directed a documentary called My Father's House, A Journey of Love and Memory, and created a 10-plus year retrospective of the music of Joni Mitchell. During the COVID-19 pandemic, she created the International Stretto Piano Festival for artists who perform on pianos with narrower than standard keys for smaller hands. The New Yorker has called her an uncanny interpreter of Joni Mitchell's canon, and the Wall Street Journal aptly says she is a musician on a mission. So we had her here last week, and we kind of had to cut the conversation short because there's a lot of story to tell. And so we decided to bring her back this week. Next week, we're going to have a guest host from Piano Worldwide as well. So that'll be fun. But we had some space to bring Hannah back this week. And so here she is. Welcome back, Hannah.
Thank you so much, Ethan. What a pleasure to be back here and to have members of your community and mine joining.
Yeah, for sure. And we were talking about it before we got started. You found a rapt audience here with Piano Tech Radio Hour, because you've got that kind of perfect mix of, just sort of the music and the magic of pianos, but also like something interesting technical, right? We're nerds here. We could do a session where we talk about, lacquer drying or something, right? On the finish of the piano. But yeah, so this is kind of fun and nerdy at the same time. And there's also a cool storyline going on with everything that's coming together. So maybe what we could do to start off, is give a quick recap of what we did talk about last week before we join into kind of finishing that story. And then, by the way, we're hoping to make some time, maybe the full second half of the session today or close to that, just to kind of engage and interact with the audience and get some stories of other people. So yeah, give us a little bit of recap from your memory. What did we go over last week?
Definitely. Well, I wanted to let everybody know that there is an emerging invention that is all over the world. Pianos with smaller keys. Pianos have been rebuilt independently by artists and technicians so that people have a choice of key size for their size of hand. And it's not something we're waiting for. This has arrived. And the festival that I created and fortunately met Carol Leone and Rhonda Boyle, my co-artistic directors, who have this worldwide community, it very, very quickly materialized because there's such passion for this innovation. So I talked about the festival, a little bit how it came to be. We looked at some graphs of gender inequality, because obviously men have bigger hands than women. We saw a lot of information, which anybody who wasn't here is welcome to review by seeing last week's podcast. And also going to the paskpiano.org website, which has a lot of information about statistics and written articles, overviews. I'm really here because I want to tell my story, my experiences, and how I came to spend 30 years of my life, thousands and thousands of dollars, and all of this time because I believe in it so much, and things that I've learned that I'd like to share with other people. There are a lot of people here who have other experiences I know they'd like to share, but I want to share my story. And if anyone has questions about it to me, or questions to you, Ethan, I think it would be great for us to spend some substantial time engaging them and letting them ask us what they'd like to know.
Yeah, for sure. That was a good recap. And I think one salient point that I withdrew is, we were calling them Stretto pianos, which is, we talked about how that was kind of great for marketing. It sounds good. It sounds like very, even though it's kind of a movement it's been underground, and hasn't necessarily had a name. Having that name for it kind of gives it some good branding to hold on to, and really makes it feel very solid and real, and like it's actually been around for a long time, even though the sort of term Stretto piano is relatively recently coined. But also, there's some flexibility around what a Stretto piano is that may seem a little bit less intimidating than thinking that you've got to create a whole new piano. I mean, really, a lot of what's going on is there's a Stretto keyboard that you can put into an existing piano, which makes this whole idea of, when I think of rebuilding a piano, I think, I got to put a soundboard in and a pin block and replace the strings and, do some sort of action geometry adjustments. And, there's maybe you got to refinish it. Rebuilding a piano is a lot more intimidating than sort of replacing an action or rebuilding an action or something like that. So this is also potentially way more accessible than it may seem, that we don't have to necessarily manufacture new pianos from scratch. But can you just recap a little bit about your process of talking to Steinway? Because I think you said that you had some traction there, you had some interest, and at the same time, it added complication to your journey and sort of your process.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I just want to say one thing, since you mentioned what Stretto pianos are. My assistant, Julia Ferlin, and I, who I adore, she's part of our network of pianists who play these Stretto pianos. We are updating our StrettoPianoConcerts.org website, and you can read what the mission is and what Stretto pianos are. They're not just pianos that are rebuilt. They're any kind of piano that has smaller keys that are narrower, from Moogs to forte pianos to harpsichords. They've been around for hundreds of years. They just have smaller keys. So yes, back in the 1990s, after I had this fateful chat with Henry Steinway, who told me that all the Joseph Hoffman keyboards were destroyed after Hoffman died, I asked him and Steinway and Sons to create Stretto pianos on special order or as a new product that they would market. I was very aware from all these discussions with executives of all the major manufacturers that Steinway was setting the standard for what happens on the concert stage and in conservatories. And they really were, at least at that time, the most influential company, and those are the most influential platforms for piano innovation: concert stages, conservatories for wood and metal pianos. Other piano companies were deferring to Steinway for various reasons, which I could share in a much longer discussion, but it really was true. So I offered to have my piano put in Steinway Hall so that others could try it and we could host concerts with it. I played a recital there. My students played there. I was kind of part of the Steinway family. I was selling pianos for them to the families I worked with. And I thought we could use my piano as a prototype. People like Byron Janis, who's a famous interpreter of Chopin and other music, child prodigies, and many people who couldn't reach octaves for various reasons came to play my instrument in my home. But Steinway would not use my piano in its flagship showroom. It was really not ready to sell pianos with narrow keys, even after Henry Steinway died. So, we continued to have this conversation.
Right. Yeah. And it's, yeah, because I could see, yeah, it's sort of complicated, but it doesn't have to be that complicated, right? I mean, I think of it like, if I go to, actually, I have like a funny story that I just have to tell because it's so appropriate. It's totally off topic, but it's hilarious. So Whole Foods, right? Like if any of us go to Whole Foods, there's certain days, where it's just like sample mania. You could walk around and you could be like, oh, let me try these cheese puffs, or like, this new cocktail, with vegetable juices or something, right? And sometimes it's a product that they don't actually have stocked heavily, and they're just trying to test the traction of it, right? So from that perspective, it's not like they have to guarantee that they're selling this piano just because they have it in the showroom. They could really use it as just a sample. So anyways, the funny story that I have is a friend of mine's grandfather and grandmother. The grandfather was was notorious for being kind of like kooky and adventurous, pulling the grandmother into sort of all sorts of antics and things like that. And so the story is they made this really great pizza. His wife made this really great pizza, and he's like, they should sell this at Whole Foods. Like they should really sell this at Whole Foods. And so they actually one day he roped her into coming to Whole Foods with samples of the pizza, but without the consent of Whole Foods. So they just like jumped into Whole Foods and they set up a little pizza stand, and people are trying, hey, this is great, this is good. He's like, yeah, you can get this pizza. They should tell Whole Foods they should stock it. And then Whole Foods comes over and they're like, what are you guys doing here? Like, is this sanctioned? And they're like, no. They're like, get out of here. You can't just come bring your pizza.
So has anybody ever met or heard the guy who plays in Washington Square Park?
Yeah,
Colin
totally.
Huggins.
Mm-hmm.
So he did the same thing with his piano.
Nice.
He moved it into a library without the library's permission.
That's hilarious.
And yeah, they're very worried about me moving my piano in now because of that experience.
Right. Well,
Anyway.
like better to
That's
ask
funny.
Forgiveness than to ask for permission sometimes, but yeah, sometimes it goes awry. So after that tangent, let's take it back. So, so you said try to get it in the showroom, that wasn't really met with the reception you'd hoped. But like what happened next, in the story there?
Okay, so even though they wouldn't use my piano as a prototype, they really tried to help. I mean, it was like kind of this kind of thing, like pushing away and pulling at the same time. They wanted me to do the work. The president at the time, Frank Mazurko, and Bob Dove, who founded Boston Piano at Steinway, they introduced me to their colleagues at Kawai. They gave me lots of leagues. They sent me all over the place. Oh, we have another idea for you. Oh, well, why don't you do this? Mr. Dove offered to loan me 2 Boston pianos. He wasn't going to give them to me. He would loan me 2 Boston pianos that I would retrofit on my own, that I would find a place to put them. And all of it had to be on my expense. And I was, this young pianist. I was still studying. I went running around trying to find investors. I made proposals. I made meetings. I was typing at my computer. A lot of these people were like very large white men who really didn't understand experientially the importance of this invention. All they could think of was like money and names and like, why don't you go to Paul Simon and create the Ryman Simon piano? And I mean, it was kind of nuts. I traveled to Canada and Japan where I met Chris Donison, and that was because Frank Mazurko told me about him. I met Yoshino Nakata, who had been pushing Yamaha and Kawai to do this in Japan for his whole life. These were the pioneers of narrow key pianos. And Mr. Nakata did have some influence on Yamaha and Kawai. I collected dozens of documents and I spent countless hours studying and strategizing a template to see that key size could be improved. I brought these Yamaha and Kawai piano catalogs that had pianos with narrow keys, custom order in their, they offered them in their catalogs. I brought them back to New York, but no one on this side of the ocean had ever heard of them. They were too busy with their own work. So the companies were not even communicating with each other's. It was really, really revealing how little people work together.
Yeah.
And I just decided I would rebuild my piano independently. I didn't want to wait anymore. I didn't want to be sent on any more wild goose chases. I didn't want to be responsible financially for their work. I thought, they have all this money. Why are they asking me to do the work? Why are they asking me to do the research and development? This is so strange. So they were interested, but they wanted somebody to do the work. So I did it. I made this prototype. I wrote an article for Piano Today magazine, which you can bring up that image if you want to.
Oh yeah, sure. Let me share screen. Give me 1 second.
We saw it last time, but we can just glance at it quickly. That was a big step for me to just, have people reading about this. I knew the editor, and he was actually, Frank Mazurko introduced me to the editor. Frank was very helpful. He tried to be very helpful to me. He wanted me to do the work. And all of these things and many other actions that I took landed me on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. However, many facts were left out of this article, and it pitted me against the Steinway company to their dismay. It actually really damaged our relationship. It was all about the poor little pianist against the big bad piano company. And I didn't plan any of the content. It was really the journalists who took a lot of liberties. It was a sensationalist article. And even though I was known internationally, the company was very cold to me after that. And we had to take a little breathe in. People started asking me, are you going to start working for Steinway now? Are you going to take a job? Are you going to quit being an artist? I did not want to quit being an artist. We had a breather, and then I went back to Frank, and he said, well, we can't work with you if you don't have a patent. Go and get a patent. So then I started working on a patent, and I spent thousands of dollars and spent all this time. It's a big job to get a patent. So I got patent number 6,020,549 in the year 2000.
I'll tell you what. I mean, we have people in the community. We might have some people on the call today who have patents on pianos, design stuff or whatever. But I just have to say, from my perspective, I'm a fairly ambitious guy. I've got a PhD. I've got master's degree, I've done a lot of different things, entrepreneur, have to, do all sorts of stuff to get like a corporation and all this. I feel like doing a patent sounds like just like, I can't even imagine, right? It just sounds too complicated. I'm sure, maybe I could try to handle it someday, but I'm really impressed, right? Like, and I'm in the piano industry, right? Like I know how pianos work and the design and all that stuff. But I have to say, like actually getting a patent is this so it's very surprising and impressive that you went to this degree,
It's a little bit weird. I just did everything they told me to because I wanted this so badly. I wanted it for other pianists. I wanted it for myself. I wanted to be able to play concerts with little keys. I wanted other people to do it. So I worked my tush off whenever I wasn't playing concerts or teaching or writing music. I became a composer. I had a very busy life with my husband at the time, who was an internationally acclaimed viola player. We were traveling around the world all the time. Somehow I managed to fit this all in, and I was very proud of myself. So I was confident that this was going to be the thing that made it all work. However, it was patented over 20 years ago. And, like I said, I acquired it because the president of Steinway and Sons demanded one for me to do business with me. But they were just too busy to put it to use, even after another president many years later verbally agreed to license it. So, it's like bugging them, bugging them, bugging them. Time ran out. It expired. So it's available for technicians to use it if they wish without restriction. It has to do with the key pins that are underneath the pins in the key frame, because when you make keyboards smaller, the pins have to be changed, obviously, that are holding the keys in place. Anybody may look at it and see if it's useful for them. I made my effort with it. And then I moved on to the next idea. I decided to start working with a toy piano company because I had a mentor at SCORE, this small business mentorship program in the financial district here in New York City. The guy who created the first Star Wars action figures happened to be my mentor. And he said—
so he's used to making small things, I guess, huh?
Yes. And he said, Hannah, you need to go to the toy fair. And I was like, what? And he said, a lot of people come into this office and they ask me for help. And I just tell them to leave because I think their project is never going to make it. But you've got something here that's going to amount to something. And I want you to get involved with the toy fair. And I was like, oh my God, what next?
I have to say, you know what? I mean, great. I mean, that's great. And this is cool. I mean, this piano we're looking at looks like a authentic, functional piano, not just a toy or whatever. But the story in a sense sounds like a man with a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So he's in the toy industry already. And so it's kind of naturally he thought, well, yeah, let's send you to the toy fair. That's the next step. Interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting, potentially successful step, but it also makes sense that he would be the person that would recommend that, right?
Totally. He just happened to.
And by the way, I just happen to often recommend to people that they should start a podcast. So, I mean, it just happens to be, oh, you should start a podcast. That's the great next step for you. And I noticed that pattern in myself, and it doesn't necessarily the best advice for everyone, but it's a similar pattern. Yeah. So how long were you involved here, and how fruitful was it? Like what happened?
Well, it was interesting. I went to the toy fair. I got a pass. You can't just walk into the toy fair. You have to be invited, or you have to pay. You have to be a manufacturer. So I managed to get in through my SCORE connection, my business mentorship. And I walked around, and then I saw this little red piano. And I asked them if I could play it. And I just started playing. And I started attracting a lot of attention because I was playing, everything from Bach to my own music or whatever. I was just playing the piano. And Show and Hut decided that they wanted to hire me. I'm also a filmmaker, so, they hired me to do some promotional videos. We recorded me or some of my kids playing all these different models. I started writing literature for toy pianos. I have a publishing deal, so, I write music for my students. And I have a video that's really entertaining, but I don't have releases from the kids, so we couldn't play it today. But it's on my Vimeo page. If anybody wants to see kids playing a real piano that has strings and hammers, it's not a toy piano with chimes. This is this wonderful little red string piano. But they had to stop producing them because they were just impractical. They were too expensive to sell for the market at that particular time. I mean, I think they cost like $1,500 to make. They'd have to sell them for twice that, or for $5,000 or whatever it was. It was just impossible to sustain them. So I got one of the last ones, and I intend to use it at our festival. And it can be another kind of prototype. The kids can put their feet on the floor. They don't need stools. They can play the pedals. I mean, it's not a perfect instrument, but if a technician works on it for a few hours and you use a mic, it sounds pretty good. It's cute, and it works. You can teach technique to small children in a different way than you can on the standard wood and metal piano.
Yeah, this is reminding me, and we'll have him back soon. I've been corresponding. Can you see this new? Oh, actually, I minimized it. Let's try to bring it back up. Can you see this other browser page I brought in here?
How beautiful!
So this is David Clavins, and he's I believe he's in Latvia. And he's just a kind of a very fascinating iconoclast. So he's kind of completely redesigned the piano to kind of first principles. This is kind of the first type of piano that he became known for. And he decided he would make the bass strings very long by, here's the model 4501, I think 450i, or 450i. So this is something that he became known for. He would build these giant pianos with super long strings. You have to climb a ladder to play. But on the other hand, he actually has been commissioned by a well-known artist, a well-known musical artist, to create this actually smaller piano, similar concept, but it's a very small piano in terms of the, if you compare it to a typical upright piano, it's quite light and trimmed down, and there's not a lot of case there to add weight to the thing, and it takes advantage of some of his scaling principles that he utilizes. So, but all that to say, these pianos, I think these could definitely get more popular and go more broadly marketed across the world. And at the same time, I think he's got a process where he can, create a unique piano like that. And, I think that the thing that I'm walking away with is you don't have to sell a piano like that for a few $1,000s. You could sell it for 10 or 15, if it's a quality instrument that people get something out of. I just thought I'd share that as an interesting.
Oh my God, we have to have these for our festival. Sure.
Yeah. And he might be into creating Stretto versions of these instruments. Who knows? But there's all sorts of potential collaborations on the horizon.
Would love that. Oh my God, that is so exciting. That is so exciting. Are there any in the United States yet?
Oh yeah. And I've helped him import a couple. He has people that sell them, and then it comes into, say, California or whatever, and these people aren't used to shipping something in from overseas and having to go through customs and all that. So David will reach out to me, say, "Hey, Ethan, can you help these people? You're in the States at least. Yeah, they need to go through customs and get this thing picked up and all that stuff." So I'll help. I've helped out with a couple of those deliveries, but
cool.
There's not a lot of them. There's in the United States. I think, of course, the Una Corda that we just saw, that's what that's called. That's the smaller one. There's just kind of a handful, right? But they're around. And the larger ones, the 450i, those have been around for much longer. So there's probably more. But again, we're talking on the order of like 100 probably. It's not expansive. But yeah, very, very cool instruments. And especially the Una Corda, because unlike the previous piano, it's much more portable and flexible. I think there's probably a higher market potential for those. You could add pickups to them and do lots of cool stuff with it. So,
do you know how many pounds it weighs?
Oh man, I mean, that's a good question. I think it's probably on the order of less than 1,500 pounds or something like that. I don't.
It has a cast iron plate.
I mean, I could look at the airway bill, to be honest.
We'll talk about that more.
Yeah.
So, can I continue?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. Go on.
I don't want to run out of time because
for sure. We're trying to finish up the story and get the comments.
I want to engage Carol Leone from Dallas and her technician as well. So I just want to wrap up a little bit what happened with me. Okay.
Yeah.
So I worked with Show and Hut for a number of years. I worked with Hohner kids. I couldn't inspire them to do anything, but I've worked at the toy festivals. I have all these kids in my life. So, I've worked with miniature instruments for many years. And I also got in touch with electronic keyboard companies. I talked to Roland. I talked to several other companies. I mean, I tried very hard. I came very close to getting some prototypes made. And then I just really, I kept going back to my original proposal about concerts. It's like concerts. That's the way to go. I knew it when I was in my 20s. We have to do concerts. I know there are concerts out there. I'd caught wind of some things because people from PASC had found me somehow on email or whatnot. And I eventually, I made some time in my schedule to get to know the next president after Frank had retired. And I developed a very nice relationship with Ron Losby, who was the last CEO and president of Steinway and Sons until 2021. I met him in 2016, and he came to my apartment. He played my piano. He laughed. He smiled. He wasn't angry with me about the Wall Street Journal article. He just thought it was hilarious. We became friends very quickly, and he brought my PowerPoint presentation to China and to Germany. I mean, just like Frank, just like Bob. Like, he was like, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, and you do that, and you. So I continued to, like, I don't want to say work for them, but I did what they asked me to do. And we spent years discussing possibilities. We talked about China. He encouraged me. He would be busy and there would be breaks in between. And he just kept saying, oh, you do it, Hannah. What are you going to do next? What are you going to do next? And, I thought, well, why do I have to do this on my own? Finally, in 2018, he said, look, let's put your piano in a public place and see what happens. So I found a gallery and a church that agreed to work with me, and I began to produce concerts there whenever I could, while still, making my living, teaching, playing my concerts on the normal keys and all of that. And by the time the pandemic took place, I received a new work from a composer whose name is Clemens Rotting, which had a very big, stretchy first chord that I just can't play on the conventional keys. So I decided that I would only play this piece on my Stretto piano, which I just called my little keys back then. And that's how the International Stretto Piano Festival was born. I decided, okay, I don't want to just play concerts by myself. I'm going to invite my friends in New York. I'm going to have a festival. And I remembered Rhonda Boyle, who had reached out to me. I think I had known Carol Leone's name. And I just decided to invite them to do this with me. And I was very impressed with all the work they had done. Where the three of us have kind of been on different tracks for the past 2 decades, or for me, 3 decades. And they have created this amazing network of people all over the world called People for Alternately Sized, Pianists for Alternately Sized Keys, the PASK network, paskpiano.org. I think Carol Leone put it in the chat. And, it attracts hundreds of people online who are searching for ways to acquire Stretto pianos. And they were really the ideal people to partner with for a piano festival. I could have just, kept talking the ears off of my friends in management here in New York and try to do like which celebrity can we get on for? I just thought having this happen organically with people who are already playing, who are already on board, it just felt right. And in its inaugural season, without any promotion or budget, the 2021 festival grossed $8,600. There were 400 people attending, 18 pre-recorded online concerts. This was pre-vaccinations. And it was overwhelming to me how wonderful the music making was, how there was like no fighting, no competitiveness. It was like we were working together as a unit, and there was a lot of joy. There was a lot of positivity, and Ron was really quite flabbergasted. There was like a dead silence on the end of the telephone when I said, we made $8,600. And I knew more successes would come. And I knew that he was like torn because he just didn't really want to promote these pianos. It will upset the industry to go whole hog and promote these. So however, around that time, he told me that I could offer Stretto pianos on custom order on behalf of Steinway to the public, and they would take custom orders. I received 2 orders, and the caveats were they weren't going to put it on the website, they weren't going to market it. I had to do all the work. So, I mean, that's also like a little bit mixed up, right? So I received 2 orders for Stretto Spirio pianos. I'm sure everybody knows what a Spirio piano is out there. If you don't, let me know. But it was too soon for them to make Stretto pianos with the Spirio mechanism. They have to get every single detail right. And I would need to search among the very rich by word of mouth and with my website to find customers for newly built Steinway Strezzo pianos without any proof that I was a legitimate rep for the company, no business card. I would have to create a kind of showroom so people could experience my piano. So it's, it was interesting to experience this. Carol and Rhonda and I were still getting to know each other. That was really like the biggest turning point for me, that after grossing $8,600, having 18 pre-recorded concerts and 400 people being there at a time when there was no in-person concerts going on, I thought, well, okay, I need to create a piano venue. I need to put my piano in a venue in New York so people can come anytime. And it's the most ambitious thing I've ever wanted to do in my life. It is not about me. It's about this community. I would like to give people the opportunity. And I want to segue now into talking about Dr. Carol Leone and David Brown, who spoke up at the last podcast, who is the technician at Southern Methodist University Meadows School of the Arts in Dallas, Texas. And Carol Leone is the chair of piano studies and a professor there. She is this outstanding academic who's contributed enormously to the use of Strezzo pianos in performance and in education for years. She's an accomplished pioneer who structured her teaching and performances and her life with Strezzo pianos, a really excellent example for all of us. If there were 10 or 20 universities like this that were this far along, we would see all kinds of changes, positive ones, beautiful ones. Well, I'll just give a brief description, but at the Q&A, I'd like her and David to be, the second people to answer questions because people want to know more about this.
Sure.
SMU has a very large auditorium with 3 concert pianos. One is an American Steinway Model D with 3 keyboard actions, the original action with its conventional 6.5-inch octave keys, a second action with 6.0-inch octave keys, and a third action with a 5.5-inch octave action. The 2 alternate actions have DS keyboards built by Steinbuehler and Company, which we discussed in the first podcast too. David Steinbuehler is the person who has made, the most recognized and the largest number of Strezzo DS keyboards in the past 20, 30 years. There are also 2 piano studios at SMU with Steinway Model B instruments that were retrofitted with alternate keyboards by Steinbuehler. One's a DS 5.5-inch octave and a DS 6.0-inch octave. There are also several upright pianos in practice rooms with alternately sized keys. So there's the ability to rehearse, to experiment, to teach, to perform. It's quite wonderful. Today, David Brown, the technician and a participant in this radio hour last week, sent me this statement. There are many aspects to installing and for finishing a reduced size keyboard, but they all follow normal everyday parameters. Any technician with modest experience with grand actions can measure and install. It will take time and there will be a learning curve, but the payoff is the ease with which you can change actions and the absence of changes to the original production action, pedals and furniture, due to the modular nature of the retrofit. He says, I am happy to be a resource should you have questions. He doesn't want to speak today, but he's happy to get written questions and Carol can answer.
And we might have him back. I think part of the reason he didn't want to speak today is just because I think he's getting over something.
Yeah.
Maybe his voice is not working properly. But he wrote me an email last week after the presentation and said he's really more than happy to just kind of share about his experience and show the pianos and all this stuff. So we'll try to set up a session coming up soon where he can share more about that, from a hands-on perspective of a technician. That could be very interesting.
Now, Ethan, how much can we go over today? 5 minutes?
Maybe. Usually we don't go over more than 5, And again, whatever, we can keep having you back for months if you got a longer story to tell. But well,
I want to say my closing statement because I see what time it is, and I don't want to take away from the Q&A.
Yeah. Now's a good time. Yeah, I think
Okay, so I'm
there's a
gonna-
couple of things just to kind of set the agenda here. So we've got some comments and questions in our chat already, which I
Yeah.
think it would be useful to take a moment to kind of read through.
Yeah.
If we have time, if we even have time for that, we might not. But I think, yeah, if you've got a statement you want to say, do that. And then
Yeah.
again, we could talk more later on a different thing, or bring it back with someone from SMU or something. But
That'd be
but
great.
the game plan from here, why don't you say what you wanted to get out for the kind of final statement? Then we'll go to your guest that you wanted to highlight. And then if we have time, we'll go through the chat record and kind of read some of the commentary. Okay.
Okay, I'll go as rapidly as I can. This is
But
really
we won't go much over than 5 minutes, because that's just not what we try to keep it really consistent.
I got it. I'll go as rapidly as I can.
All right.
I feel very strongly about this after 30
Totally.
years doing this alone and with the biggest piano company in the world.
Right.
Yeah, I've kind of had it. I need to go on with the mission, and I learned. So we are all aware of the supply chain issues and backups in many industries, including pianos. And we know they have timelines that they don't want to disrupt. This is a disruptive technology that we're dealing with, and we need to examine all the angles and attitudes that the powers that be have, and we have to imagine their point of view. Changes are not just about things, they're about people and people working together, not against each other, not criticizing them, not putting them down, but working together. The first electric cars were invented in 1890. So it took more than 100 years for changes in the world and industry for them to become embraced. Resistance is very normal when it comes to progress, and something powerful has to happen for acceptance to take place. Also, there's a lot of prejudice coming from anyone who cannot experience a new product and only hears about it. Experience is needed to form an intelligent opinion, and talk alone and charts and other things won't shift attitudes quickly. We need to take action. The top piano companies create luxury items for the super rich, and the same luxury instrument is related to uprights for millions of kids, amateurs, and pros of all levels who want to play music on pianos. We have to find some actions to bring these parties together. The gap between these demographics can be narrowed by playing Stretto pianos, by having as many people play them as soon as possible. Spirio solved the problem that most ultra-rich don't play their pianos very much. They buy them, they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. Spirio allows them to listen to their pianos without a human pianist present. And Stretto can change the landscape of music and create equity in a much bigger, out-of-the-box way. But it takes much more work, and it will take many more actions in an organized manner that's allowing spontaneity. And these pianos that you pointed out. Okay, let me fast forward a little bit. In spite of the fact that this innovation is a no-brainer from day one for all of us in the Stretto piano community, we need to take an empathetic look at why progress has been so slow. We need to understand that the aims of the manufacturing industry are not what we want, and we have to work with them. These companies have consistently told me to do it on my own. We cannot count on them. We've got to do something on our own to create power. It was very confusing to me when I was young, but now it's just illuminating. They don't want to do it. So that's why I keep saying repeatedly, I suggest we focus on performance since we have the instruments. Performances will lead the way, and that's the strongest way that we can put the speed on this.
I would say, interject, which I think is really interesting about showing the demand for these things is, there's decades, maybe even you could say centuries, where there are certain product like markets that were not marketed to for products, like minorities or women or whatever, and it's only been coming to light in the past several decades where companies like, oh, well, it's not that there's a demand in these different markets, right? For slightly different product or specialized or whatever. And it's all to the good, right? It's like people need the product, you make money, like everybody wins. There's no there's no sort of special treatment that's given. It's just sort of economics in the end. So I think that's the fascinating part of all this is there's, just by the nature of the graphs that you showed, there's a market here. And as long as you tap into it and you pay a little bit of attention, right, and try to get to the market, it's quite possible to make it profitable. I could see that. Yeah.
We keep working and show that it makes money and show that it's being used right now, it's going to happen. I mean, right before this podcast, my students had a concert at Steinway Hall on Thursday, and I brought the Steinway magazines home. There's an article about equity, about sustainability, about minorities, about women. I wish I had the magazine that I could just hold it up for you right now. They will embrace this if we do all the work, if we get the media attention, if we really, put it out there in the right way. There are all kinds of instruments that will come from the proliferation of concerts. If you dig around online and with people in the know, like you just showed us, you can see that there are many different kinds of pianos and keyboard instruments that have been popping up for more than a couple of decades. For a long time, people have been working on it. And if we have a concerted effort to use the instruments in concerts and show the demand, it's going to be easy. But it will take some time for those concerts to be established. So that's really, I could keep going.
No, I think we got the point. I appreciate you putting, I think a lot of what's coming across here is your passion around this is infinite. And also just like your belief in it, that you've been doing this. Like I said, getting to understand patent law is a great, could be very profitable and but listen, I'm intimidated by it. So you put a lot in, you care about this. I think this is very evident and fascinating. Yeah. Let's bring some other people on to chit chat about it. Did you want to specifically bring up Carol or something, or should we go to the chat?
If anybody has questions for me, please ask them now. And then after that, let's see if you have questions for Carol about her whole setup. Mm-hmm. And, I'm sure she'd be happy to give as much information as she can. But does anyone here have any questions for me?
I can see Glenn sort of raising his hand. So let's bring him up here. And if anybody else has something, you can put the chat in, or you can tap that, raise your hand button if you see it somewhere. But Glenn, you got to unmute. Are you unmuted? Yeah, you're unmuted. So
I'm unmuted now.
Yeah, go ahead.
As a piano technician, I have a few questions regarding the keyboard itself. It's understandable you can reduce the size of the keys, and that's what's necessary. But what about the length of the keys, especially the front key to the black key where it starts? Did that also change in dimension to facilitate?
It's all exactly the same.
That should be the same, because the reasons you have a D to an F sharp is still going to be hindered by the length of a white key. But that also should be in proportion to just reduce the size of the stretch that you would have for major tenths in particular.
Yeah.
That's one aspect. The other aspect is the dog leg that these keys need in particular. That's the part that concerns me a little bit, not so much you narrow it in. You have to have the action, this dimension to fit the piano. You can't really crunch it, that part anymore, in a complete piano redesign, because of whippings and all that stuff, you can't make it much more narrow. So that kind of fixed parameters, width of your strings and the hammer, that you can't change that so easily. So that has to remain. But the dog leg that you have to get the low A and the high C8 to go out and reach, that puts extra strain on the ends, but that you're not really talking a straight key down the middle. So that would be one of the things I would like more clarification on. And with the stereo technology, why can't you have all the solenoid operate the action and have a keyboard in front that you plug in that sends the electrical signal?
Trust me, when they're ready, they'll do it. They just didn't want to do it. Just don't have it on.
Because if you had a keyboard that you had the front weighted off, because you would still be, if you had it disconnected from the back action to the front of the keys, you would still have to have the keys feel normal. But this way, you can build a separate keyboard that would fit into the back, the action, that would be operated by the solenoid systems, and electronically or digitally, you would have the interface. that you're doing with Spirio anyway. Jan Lang can play this piano, and
Well,
you have
Carol-
yours, and you're playing over there.
Carol
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
interjected that Steinbuehler does make keyboards that fit disc clavier, so that's similar. It's a similar technology. Steinway is just not ready to do it. When they are, I'm sure if they're willing to hear your input, we'll give it to them. Okay.
Yeah,
But
that's
I love that you asked those questions, and I think the best way for them to be answered is at your next opportunity to experience and see and feel and look at a Stretto piano somewhere near you, or if you try. Where are you located?
I'm located in Chilliwack, BC, so I'm way on the west coast and near Vancouver.
Well,
So
we have pianists, we have colleagues in we'll put you in touch with them.
Yeah.
awesome.
Okay.
Because there's several piano parameters that are hand sized like mine. I can take an 11th. I'm not quite on the 12th, so I'm comfortable with a regular 6.5. But if you shrink it down, you're not keeping certain proportions the same. All you're doing is changing the width, but you haven't changed the key dip and you haven't changed the length of the keys so that they are actually a reduction on all three dimensions. And
Well,
even wearing off and all that stuff. So that's another.
We could talk for hours about preferences. Key
Mhm.
dip is pretty important when you're playing virtuoso stuff. You don't want to have a shallow key dip, but I think this is like a more detailed conversation that we could have
Yeah,
in
no,
the
that-
future about all those things. Yeah,
those are great points. Yeah.
very
I
good.
I see Larry's got his hand raised. Larry, what you got for us?
Yes.
I'm sorry we don't have time for like an in-depth discussion for everything. And again, maybe we could do a future session again if Hannah would like to. But yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Hannah you mentioned that you kind of go back and forth between normal keyboards and Stretto keyboards. And I wonder how difficult is it to make the mental and physical changes when you switch back and forth?
Well, so I studied with Kenneth Cooper, a renowned harpsichord player who also played piano. He played the clavichord. I remember him playing Goldberg variations on a clavichord. I mean, he did it all the time, and I do it all the time. It's not difficult, is the answer to your question. I mean,
Yeah.
people have been doing it for centuries all the time.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's a mental thing because of standardization, that there's a little fear involved. It is not hard. I mean, I admit that there's certain pieces that I've played on the conventional keys for so much of my life. I like playing them there. But there are other pieces that I really prefer to play on my Stretto piano because I don't have to do this. I can do this instead.
I mean, there are some things that I studied neuroscience. Do you know what I mean? So I know a little bit about the brain's flexibility. And there's certain things that are difficult for our brain to be flexible and our muscles and things like that. But there's some things that are relatively easy. And just to give an example of how adaptable the brain is and can kind of like adjust these dimensions and things like that, they've experimented with an electrode array for blind people that stimulates the tongue, I believe, in different areas based on a visual scene. So it creates like basically a visual map, right, on the tongue of what's out in front of them, right? And within a certain amount of adjustment, the person can sense the visual field through that type of a reception, right? Just to give you a sense of how adaptable the brain is. And I believe as well, our eyes, the way they function is when you see something out in the visual field, it's actually upside down when it hits your eye because of the nature of a lens and how it works, right? And your brain turns it right side up for you. So you see everything right side up. But you can return it upside down with a special pair of glasses. And if you walk around with those glasses on for a little bit, your brain will actually turn it back upside down once again, right? There's just to say there's a lot of adaptability there. Yeah, did somebody else have a question or comment, or did you have something else you want to say, Hannah?
Well, I'd like to take the liberty to turn the floor over to Carol because I know she's here.
Sure.
She's a busy lady. Maybe she wants to say something, and if anybody has questions to her or to me, just speak up while we still have a few minutes.
Well, hi, everyone. This has been fascinating to hear a conversation from the point of view of technicians. and Hannah's just a fantastic spokesperson. I've been sort of working in parallel with Hannah on a different part of the country for about 23 years, working primarily with David Steinbuehler, and he's in Titusville, Pennsylvania. And so I'm also, along with Rhonda Boyle, a director on the Donison Steinbuehler Foundation. And so the one thing I really like to say is that we are actually lending these keyboards free lease for a year to universities. So if any of the technicians listening to this are university technicians, and you think that there may be, someone, a champion on the faculty that really would like to either research or play or have their students play or, practice on these keyboards, we're actually lending them to pianists. And it's becoming a very successful project for us. We've been placing them in a lot of important universities, not just in the US, but in other countries.
And by the way, there's quite a few people who I know for a fact work for universities here. So it's a great audience to deliver that to. I'm assuming there'll be maybe some competition for the resources once you get some exposure here. But yeah.
Good.
Anything else you wanted to share, Carol? Or we could go to the chat and cover a couple of questions in the last 5 minutes or something. Or yeah.
Sure. Well, one thing I do want to share is that one thing that David Steinbuehler did for me is to lower the black keys just a dime's width. And David Brown has done that on a keyboard as well for me, our technician at SMU, who's an incredible technician. I hope you do get a chance to have David Brown on. So that helped a lot because, of course, with small hands, when we're talking about getting in and out of the keys, you want to make everything less effortful. So when the black keys are closer together with the narrower keys, having them a little bit less tall is helpful as well. So there's that dimension.
As far as kind of addresses what Glenn brought up. Yeah, so there's sort of other tweaks that you could make.
What you can do is reduce the hammer blow by a little bit, and that allows you to shallow the key dip, because you're making the balance of a teeter-totter. So if you just raise the hammer blow from 1.75 inch to say even 1 5/8 of an inch, then you would be able to just decrease your key dip just by a millimeter, whatever, just to keep everything in proportion, because that's part of what it is. It's not just narrow the key, but if you can get the key dip in there for smaller hand, because they feel different. Yeah, that's all I say.
Yeah.
Yep. Great.
So,
anything else, Carol?
Well, I mean, I could go on for a long time, of course, but yeah, if there's anything specific, in terms of, like how does this work in a university setting? Let me look in
the chat here. I mean, we had a ton of engagement, so let me just review here. Somebody was asking about how many Hoffmans were made. Larry said that that is not necessarily true that all Hoffman's piano were destroyed. There's 2 kept by Hoffman's son, Anton, who died a few years ago, and Gregor Benko may know their present whereabouts. So that's kind of interesting.
Well, hang on a second. Hang on a second. I talked to Ephraim Zimbalist about one of those pianos because Ephraim Zimbalist Sr. died and Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. I talked to him on the phone. He measured the piano. The keys were not small. Steinway did its very best to retrieve the ones. Joseph Hoffman played many different pianos. He owned many different pianos. He had so many patents and inventions of his own. He was on, dozens of patents with Steinway and Sons, but I'm pretty sure that they destroyed all of the ones that had small keys. If anybody discovers any of those pianos that have smaller keys, please let us know. But Henry Steinway told me that he tracked all of them down after Hoffman died, and he and his family, they really wanted to, burn the evidence. But the recordings still exist.
it's like a book burning or something. But anyway,
I did find someone who has a Hoffman grand piano last year in New Jersey in their home. I was so excited. I wanted to go and play it. And I had someone measure the keys, and it was a conventional keys.
Yeah.
And then just another little comment here. So it looks like Malcolm went to the website for the Unicorda piano that we reviewed earlier. He said that they're 160 grams, which is around 200 pounds or so. So we got that answer on how much those Unicorda pianos weigh. And let's see here. What else did we get? You can check that. Digital. So the digital projects was mentioned, and it looks like there's some development that's already going on with those. The comment was made in the chat by Rhonda, but it's an interesting idea. But there's certainly like a handicap there. Like if you're just using a digital keyboard, it kind of takes away the enjoyment of using a physical keyboard. You could create like a other digital keyboard with weighted keys. Anyways, it certainly adds some complexity to the system for sure. Anybody else that has like a final question or comment before we roll out? We only got just like a minute or two. But other than that, yeah, again, we can continue the saga at a later time. Is that Megan? Did I see you have okay, Megan and Wayne have something. So we'll put you on. You've got the last comment here. So let's add a spotlight and see what you have to say. You're muted, so just make sure you unmute yourself.
Okay. Hi.
I see. Wayne's got it. He's got the keyboard right there behind him. He's created it since the last session.
I could talk. We could do a whole other an hour on my involvement with David. So I'm involved with David for about maybe 15 years with one customer named Jenny Wang. She has 2 keyboards. Been to David's shop but a dozen times, taken actions there. One time my actions got confiscated by the US government. We got them back. Following that, I ended up having a heart attack at David's shop, massive heart attack. Came back home. A piece of my heart is damaged, but I'm okay. Gosh. And I was quite involved with helping him develop doing very precise measurements in all the Yamaha pianos. So it doesn't matter what Yamaha piano it is you have. It could be a CF3S, could be a Disclavier, could be a C3, a C2. David can make a piano action, and he can deliver it to Australia, and it'll fit right in and work perfectly. There's some minor adjustments you can make, but the Yamaha are so precise with their instruments that any action will refit. And so I'd had a lot of involvement with David on this. I have not been involved with the task group a lot. I'm too busy, but my heart is in this, and it's very important to
literally. Your heart is literally in it. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Beautiful. Well, thanks for taking word for the team. That's a very extreme story, but yeah, thanks for sharing, Wayne. Yeah, Wayne works very closely with Yamaha, so that's great to hear. Everything that he's been doing for the project. All right, well, we should probably sign off now, unfortunately, and again, we can continue at a later date, the saga. But yeah, any final words from you, Hannah or Carol, before I sort of wrap us up and read us out here on the session?
Well, Carol, do you want to say something quickly?
Well, I would recommend, if anyone wants to hear the pianos and watch pianists performing on them, you could go to the Stretto concerts, or you can go to the PASC YouTube channel, or you can go to my YouTube channel.
Okay, and what I want to say, that we live in a world where everybody wants more time, speed, and efficiency. And we all save a lot of time practicing on Stretto pianos, and they feel great. And I just want to reiterate the need for as many performance spaces as possible. If anyone has any suggestions about places in New York City, reach out to me, go to my website, or let Ethan know and he can let me know. I hope we see all of you again. I'm so happy that Carol's with us, because she really, we can use the setup that she has as an example to really grow this community and allow as many people as possible to experience these instruments. That is the way to go. Experience. So that's my
Beautiful.
heartfelt feeling that I want to leave everyone with.
Excellent. Thank you both for joining. Thanks for everybody's comments and questions and participation. Yeah, very cool topic to talk about. And we're happy to talk about it, I'm sure, in the future. So just want to say, of course, we've reached the end of a musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Again, thanks to Hannah. Thanks for Careful jumping on and everybody that brought in their questions and comments. As always, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. If you joined us today by just signing up for this session individually, you can make your life more convenient. And you can do that by subscribing to Piano Tech Radio Hour at just $16 a month. You'll get the recording of today's session in our member area, as well as automatic registration for each week's new session. You can sign up at bit.ly/PTRH. That's bit.ly/PTR, join PTRH, sorry. So bit.ly/join PTRH. And additionally, I will put some text in the chat so you can click some of those links directly if you so choose. And in particular, I'll just call out what I'd like to do is add into the chat a couple of things. One, how you can subscribe to Piano Tech Radio Hour. I've also added a feedback link as well. So if you'd like to say anything about today's session, improvements we could make, things that you particularly appreciated, we appreciate that you do that. We also have a podcast. That's pianotechradio.com. You can go to pianotechradio.com/subscribe. It's completely free. We're airing our archival episodes of the show. So that's something you can do just driving around in your car, doing dishes. And then finally, I put a Vimeo video link for how you can review our podcast on Apple iTunes. So click that link, and it's actually kind of confusing how you do it. So we made a little video on how to add a review on iTunes. It means a lot. It means more people, know about the show. They know about what Hannah's up to. They know about what everybody's doing here in the industry and how it's changing. So go check out that video and subscribe and like and review us online. All right. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining, and we will see you again next week. We'll have a guest host next week. Should be a fun one with Piano Worldwide. Bye-bye.
Bye.